Hi everyone, this is Jason, producer of DataBS. Welcome to part one of our interview with Kevin Hartman, Head of Partner Solution Architects in the Americas at Databricks and Lecturer for Data Science at UC Berkeley. This conversation between James and Kevin was so good, it ran for over an hour and a half, and we just could not bear to leave so much on the cutting room floor, so we decided to split the episode into two parts. We really hope that you enjoy part one of this interview, where they discuss collaboration, community, and best practices in data science. Here we go.
Welcome to DataBS, a show dedicated to tackling the big questions impacting the world of data and ML AI without any of the BS. My name is James Weingart. Each week I sit down with guests from across the data ecosystem to unpack how they're shaping their businesses or the businesses of others through the real-world application of data engineering, ML AI, infrastructure, analytics, and more. No fluff, unfiltered, but slightly edited to remove noise. This is DataBS. Let's get into it.
All right, Kevin. So tell me about you, who you are, and what do you do?
Hi, everybody. I'm Kevin Hartman. I work at Databricks as a partner solutions lead and advisor to our consulting and SI partners in the Americas. I lead a team of what we call partner solution architects that work with global and regional partners to develop Gen AI solutions and analytics solutions, create champions of our platform and solve some of the world's toughest data problems.
So what does it mean to lead a team in the partner solutions architect space? What does that mean for your day to day?
So day to day, I could dot in and get involved with numerous conversations with our partners. It typically, involves enablement and some education, maybe review of solutions that run on our platform. So, kind of to put this into maybe very simply stated, my goal is to help our partners be better partners. And my teammates that I manage a pretty small team, but mighty team. And each team member focuses on a different portfolio of regional and consulting partners to help them. We've got a number of different initiatives, things that we seek to enable our partners with. I mentioned champions. So one of the programs that we have is something called Databricks Partner Champion. And these are people who are well-versed in data and AI solution creation on our platform, well-versed in Databricks. They're certified. They've done a number of solutions for customers already. They're sort of viewed as an extension of our own internal software or solution architects. So it's a really neat program. It's a really neat culture, and it's really wonderful to be a part of that community.
And when you talk about SI partners and things like that, you got your global, regional, boutique kind of firms that you
right.
work with. So your globals are your Accenture and Deloitte, and all the other ones, your regionals. I actually don't. Lovelytics is probably a good example.
They
there.
are actually, yeah.
Yeah, you got your boutiques, which is probably more like us, right?
Yeah. Excited to be talking to you about that too, and
hopefully one day we'll be able to work on something together. So.
I don't doubt it at all.
The Gen AI kind of space is also interesting because you head up the Gen AI portion of the partner solution architect organization.
I do focus a little bit on that, but I sort of cross-cut. Our three main pillars that we are going to market with is obviously generative AI. That's really big. Something called Unity Catalog. We could talk about that maybe a little later, and then just data warehousing. So those are sort of the three big motions and uses of our platform that we are helping our partners with. And I do focus a little bit on Gen AI since for my background, but there's other pieces to that puzzle too.
You kind of got to build up to Gen AI, right? So you got to have your data together, supporting the data warehouse.
You have to. Those are the pieces you need to have put in place before you can really do some Gen AI solutions that would be pretty impactful, right? You're getting your data outside of silos and put into a unified platform for use.
Let's break those pillars out a little bit. So, if you had a fresh customer, my gut feeling would be that you'd go, let's get your data together. Let's do this data warehouse thing, right? That's going to be strictly focused on just getting it landed, as an initial thing. Second thing is going to be, how do we provide this out to the enterprise in a secure way that meets our compliance obligations, and also enables better access and understanding of what is available using something like Unity Catalog. And then the third thing is, okay, now that you have, these controls in place and you can support, the various use cases, you have your, data analysis, business intelligence, machine learning, AI type use cases. And then, like Gen AI, I consider to be a little bit more full life cycle as compared to, the more traditional type of data workloads. And so as people evolve through that and leverage the platform, your team is focused on helping the solutions provider be as effective as they can within the ecosystem, right?
Right. It is sort of an evolution of needs. Everyone wants to, get to impact, driven insights as fast as they can, and it does take some steps, right, to get your data organized and made accessible for some of these downstream solutions. I would say, the first thing you need to do is pull your data from where it may be now and getting it into a unified platform, right? A unified platform like what we have, organized and then governed by Unity Catalog, which is an open source technology. Those are some of the pre-steps, right? So that you can do really cool analytics or insights or generative AI solutions. And also, like, to make that easier, we have what we call now a data intelligence platform that sort of combines aspects of Gen AI sort of out of the box to do insights on your data. But what you need to do is topology and organization and getting your data organized in a way that makes it understandable, right? So metadata on top of your tables and your columns, right? So you have some descriptive information about what those things mean. And our platform then allows you to do things in native language, to ask about something, right? And it's something we call BI, or just we just call Genie. It allows you to go ahead and ask questions of your data in natural language and reporting back, like in response, and it's showing visualizations about whatever you had queried, and it would show you as well the SQL behind it. So if you needed to tweak it, you can. But it really lets people who don't have that skill set really interact with their data in a way that they couldn't necessarily do before. It's really, really powerful. And then, of course, you can extend that and make it even more powerful for your domain, for your data. So we sort of, go into this philosophy of it's your data and it's unique to your organization. It's your organization's investment, your IP. And now you need to sort of look at, how do I optimize that? How do I leverage that? How do I monetize that? How do I sort of use that to get to things that I want to take to market, or things that I want to do to be more efficient? So there's lots of ways you can then start to use and leverage your data once it's been collected and organized into a lakehouse architecture. So, getting back to the original question you asked around the sort of the pillars, UC is one of the first things that, you kind of need to take that step into, by making sure that you have a proper governance and organization. That's sort of the precursor to doing anything else. And that takes work sometimes. In a greenfield environment, it might be, pretty easy, but that doesn't exist. There's usually some information that's already in these silos or in some legacy systems that need to be pulled into your lakehouse. I mentioned lakehouse a lot. That's been an adopted sort of standard now that Databricks sort of invented several years ago, but now it's been adopted as a strategy for many organizations that also have data platforms.
So the first thing we talked about was you need to get your data landed into, the lakehouse or whatever. So, how do you advise the approach for integration of these various disparate sources across silos?
It's integration or it's migration, right? So the first thing that you would want to do is sort of take stock and run some assessment to understand what your needs are going to be and what you want to lift and shift versus what you just need to keep in place. And there are different strategies for developing a solution once you have that sort of pre-information. So planning, right? Planning is important. Once you have a plan, it's then iterating on how you bring that data forward, and then also the strategies. There's something called Lakehouse Federation. So kind of going back to like what I mentioned about Unity Catalog and why you want to use that as sort of the underpinnings behind everything else. It really is a way to also govern all of your data and also AI assets too. You can govern models there. It's also enables, you to use, push down controls. So like it's a truly unified way of organizing and collecting your data. But you can also do federated connections to other data sources, leaving that data in place, but still governing it and managing it as an asset under a Unity catalog. So you still have sort of a unified place where you can manage permissions and things like that. So figuring out that sort of data estate strategy is going to be your first thing. And then once you have that down, you start iterating on that and going forward with maybe starting with a use case, just taking what is something I want to deliver on once I have my data in a place that needs to be, to make it actionable, and then trying it out, because you also need to consider people in this equation and your stakeholders and your proof of value. You can't just sort of go off and do something and then emerge 6 months later, or maybe a year later, who knows, right? But you said, oh, now I'm done with everything, now start to use it. That's not how this works, right? There's definitely things that may be driven by priorities, so they got to consider those first and take those high priority items that will deliver on the most value and implement those first and get stakeholder feedback on that, get buy-in. And then once you get that, you're generating excitement, you're getting people to leverage and use. It starts to self-feed. And if you are a director or a manager or sort of like owning this space, you have to show and report on value. So figuring out those use cases that are going to deliver on value would then enable you to keep going. And eventually, you develop a full ecosystem that has, all of your data state laid out and, working on your use cases that are really important to the business.
Yeah, and then once you're onboarded enough use cases, you have a whole process to run through. Now, onboarding a new use case is a lot easier. Maybe you already have the data sources cataloged, so you already have the access controls within Unity catalog. And then you can be like, okay, hey, this use case, we can do without any onboarding steps because X, Y, Z.
It becomes self-service, right?
Yeah, you don't have to worry about getting, whatever as data engineering or whoever to go in, figure out how to get it, on some Postgres database somewhere to federate the access across, because it had already happened at some point, because it was, I don't know, you're a bank and it's your debits database or something like that. That wouldn't be on Postgres, but you know what I'm going for.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that, like you said, that made me think about something is that, you're federating this access to these other systems as far as like where the data is, or you're moving the data into, the Databricks platform to support, warehouse activities and things like that. Latency of that data movement, so how fresh do I need the data to be based on my use case, is a significant issue when I have these like siloed data sets.
Yeah.
And so how can like Unity Catalog and these data governance tooling help support removing those barriers when you need like low latency or like always up to date data?
Latency can be viewed in a number of different ways. There's latency in just, I don't even have that data, right? So that's like the first sort of level of latency that you need to address, like making the data available. And that's the first thing that, with Unity Catalog that really enables you to, to get access in a very quick way and start discovering and, doing queries or doing natural language against your data. So that's one of the tools that really helps solve, the first level of latency, problem. Then when you get to more things like, okay, well, I've solved that, but I need to consider that latency now is like, okay, it's connected, but the query is slow, right? I need this to be faster. And that's sort of a whole other level of planning against your data estate. Now, if you're built on a lakehouse, there's lots and lots of tools that are available to you to do really sophisticated, query optimizations. And, going back to what I mentioned around the platform itself, and the use of generative AI, AI is sort of embedded now into the platform being what we call now the data intelligence platform, that allows you to, or actually what it does is it inspects and analyzes the queries that you make, the things that you're doing against data, and automatically optimizes things like partitioning and query generation, based on that information, re-optimizing like on the fly based on your usage patterns. So that's sort of another level of performance that will allow you to, get to actual insights quicker. But then you're sort of now thinking about like, well, what about data that I didn't move into the lakehouse, and now I've got to sort of work with a connected data source, and it's a different legacy warehouse system, but I'm still sort of federating it. Well, that's going to be a strategy where you need to consider, well, do I need to pre-optimize that? Do I need to are there certain queries that I just need to be bringing in and caching or making ready? You want to avoid, if possible, data replication. But if things are needed to be done in a very quick way, or need insights in a very quick way, then you're going to need to do some of that, at least maybe in an aggregate form, or maybe you're leveraging your connected data source to do the pre-aggregates for you, right? So that you're leveraging the power of that platform or that system to just sort of come up with like whatever sums or aggregates that you need, and then you're just pulling that data forward. So it gets a little bit more complicated or actually sophisticated depending on how you're federating. But the good news there, the more you sort of shift and move onto the Lakehouse platform itself, it's becoming a solved problem as far as like query performance is concerned.
Yeah, I think that there's like a story around, change data capture, CDC, from your data sources. That's going to be not 0 milliseconds, but it's going to be pretty fast to get the data replicated.
Yep.
And you can do things like, it's been a while since I did this in Databricks, but something like autoloader, et cetera, to get that data landed as quickly as possible.
That's
and
right.
then you can have like Delta Live tables see that change at the raw layer or the bronze layer, and then push up through like aggregates, et cetera, kind of in an automated fashion.
Yeah, and all those things are sequenced and made ready for you in the Lakehouse architecture. So that's called the medallion architecture you just mentioned. And the whole philosophy behind that is, yeah, let's get the data moved over quickly. So the first thing you want to consider is just raw just ingress, take it and land it first as your first sort of stage. And then as part of that, you may do some minimal processing, but it's largely kept, fairly in the original state. And this is important for, data science work or any sort of downstream work. So then you want to either enrich or you want to refine. That's usually done in what we call the silver layer. And then you are making the data then finally, ready for downstream consumption in what would be your gold layer or your curated layer is another sort of name for that. And that's going to feed into other systems that could go into a MART, or it could be something that, as I mentioned before, a data science initiative. So the platform really allows you to sort of go back to any sort of state of that data as well. So you can sort of see or look at and do analysis on what may have been in the silver layer instead. But sort of putting all these pieces together. I think you mentioned this with Delta Live tables. DLT is a framework. It's a declarative sort of language that you can put on into your definition of what you're doing, your transformation, so that when it comes to monitoring and scaling and running that query or that transformation in the environment, if you're using DLT, those things either becomes automatic, it becomes observable, and all the information that is sort of happening in real time, gives you sort of a view then of how your pipelines are being managed. So that's like another sort of impactful thing that you can do. Platform is leverage DLT to help with some of the scaling and performance things that you may had to have done on your own in the past or manually in the past.
Yeah, my understanding is this very good for do windowed aggregates over some data, have that be updated in reasonable real time, do the partition pruning as it goes through, etc. So that way, you're reducing that latency it takes to get these aggregate data sets, or these kind of final data sets that are supporting your either a data science initiative or an analytics initiative, for like an executive dashboard. And then, based on the use case, sometimes seconds matter, sometimes minutes are fine, sometimes hours are fine, and sometimes days are fine. And like, where's the needle, like based on what you're trying to do? Yeah. And, it's an optimization game. What are you going to pay for versus,
It
versus.
is, and true. But with the data intelligence engine now, it will auto optimize, based on your usage patterns too. So if you're running that query every 5 minutes or whatever it might be, it will start auto optimizing for that usage. If you're using it, only once a day, again, it really depends. But those are some of the things that become solved problems for you, so you're not having to go into the weeds and figuring it out yourself.
Yeah. So can you talk more about how data sharing in an organization can support, either cross-team or cross-organization collaboration, particularly in these like large organizations where they have more compliance obligations that they have to manage, and you don't necessarily have like, a single production workspace that's running.
Oh gosh, so that's sort of packed with a lot of different kinds of questions all in one, because now security and compliance becomes an interesting sort of dynamic to this too. Well, let's sort of start with like just in general data sharing. So I think I mentioned this, that Databricks has a philosophy of following open standards, open formats, promoting and contributing to open source initiatives, or taking something that may have been developed internally and then making that into something that is open source. And Delta sharing, so there's the Delta format first, like that was an open sourced protocol from several years ago, but then came with that something called Delta sharing. So we're using sort of the Delta format, also having a protocol for establishing the sharing of that data with other stakeholders, maybe inside or outside your organization, and making it so that that data is not moved. Right, it's not moved over. It's accessed from where it is, right? But it sort of facilitates the running of say a query or some sort of a compute against wherever that data lives already.
We're not moving the data, so we could turn off access to the data so that we don't have a potential breach if we want to remove access.
Right. So we're leaving it where it is. So there's Delta sharing, sort of one of the first things. Underpinning that, you then have things like what we call Databricks Marketplace, which if you want to monetize your data, you can make that available on a marketplace for consumption, right? And you can charge for that, like whether you're providing a service. Another sort of use case, or just maybe more in general terms, is you're taking something that may have been made available through Delta sharing and making it available into something that is called a clean room. Right, so I can bring my data, right, through Delta sharing, and then you could bring your data through Delta sharing and put it into a clean room. So then you still have like everything that is discoverable inside of that clean room, through catalog exploration, to start to do information gathering and queries across like your data and my data, and joining things and creating something that may be truly unique, but it stays within the confines of that clean room. And also, I can decide on what it is that I want to make available into that clean room too. So I might want to say, okay, I need to scrub certain Pi data. So that could be something that you're doing as a pre-step before sharing anything that could be sensitive. We're pre-agreeing on how you're going to do joins with some sort of a mechanism for creating that ID. So those are sort of things that you can do with your data. Another sort of interesting thing that you may want to do is not share your data directly, but share the characteristics of your data, right? And that's where we were talking about synthetic data generation. And there's a whole other sort of piece to that puzzle that what you could do as an organization is not provide the exact data that you might have, but create synthetic alternatives that sort of look like that and follow the sort of same distribution. If you're looking for, not necessarily the data itself, but sort of the characteristics instead, that's something else that you can also make available and share either directly in the marketplace, or say in the clean room when you're looking at, doing joins across different organizational data.
That I could go into many rabbit holes with the synthetic data thing. There's a recent paper about how synthetic data sets are not actually producing model artifacts that are behaving
That
as
are usable.
Yeah, because it does the actual, like, 'cause it's generating distribution on column level typically, and then but the distribution across the data set doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, so you have to be careful how you do that, right?
Yeah, and the more dimensionality you have in the data, the harder that problem is. Like, it's just a really hard problem. I don't think it's really solved because, like, the only way to really generate the data is to have the data itself and have it follow all the same distributions. In my opinion, somebody could prove me wrong, but like in a high dimensional data set, it's extremely hard.
Of course, high dimensional data with many different features that could be challenging. So,
but for a single one or two,
for a single column imputation type of thing, because this is a similar strategy can be employed for data imputation. I'm missing some fields, I'm missing something, so I need to sort of generate something that is close enough.
The simpler the data is, the more realistic it is, the more complicated the data is, the harder it is to synthetically create something that matches appropriately. There's another thing you talked about with clean rooms, and in my experience, clean rooms almost always have been for like due diligence processes. Have you seen other use cases for clean rooms that are interesting that you could talk about?
That's great. So yes, due diligence and sort of fact finding is definitely a really common place for this, but it could also be across multi-organization. Like you've got data on consumer behavior. I've got data on advertisement campaigns. Someone else has data on, I don't know, buying patterns or something. Like there's just different things that kind of can come together from different parties to build, a different kind of data set.
Okay, so you got like Experian plus Nielsen plus your own data.
Right? So that's the sort of the secret ingredient there, right? So you've got source information based on the real, like promotional effects of something or campaign effects on something, and then or from a retailer, and yes, Nielsen is definitely like one of those types of places that have and own a lot of that data. Experian has a lot of that data, but you have your own actuals, like your sales on your product or inventory. So the missing ingredient then is like, okay, well, how do I now more effectively run my own campaigns, given what I see out there in the marketplace, that makes me more competitive.
That's it for this episode of Data BS. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast and not miss the next one. This episode was sponsored by Cordine, a data consultancy that helps organizations unlock the power of their data. If you have a data challenge, we can help. Visit cordine.com, CORRDYN.com to learn more. See you next time.